that the cost of visiting Japan for a 2-week holiday would be enough to bankrupt a dictator. But it doesn't have to.
In the last few years, Japan has experienced a boom in tourism, from 8 million overseas tourists in 2007 to 24 million last year. And with it, it's led to a whole new wave of hostels and hotels, rail passes, buses and low-cost domestic airlines that have made it cheaper to experience and travel the country than ever before. In fact, this year in the UK, Tokyo was ranked as the cheapest long-haul destination, thanks to a fall in the value of the yen.
In this video, we'll be looking at ways that you can save money on transportation, accommodation and dining out, and giving you a general idea of how much you could be spending on any given day. The boom in tourism has seen an explosion of new hostels and hotels opening across Japan, especially in Tokyo. But whether you're staying at a hotel, motel or holiday inn, the cheapest place to stay in Tokyo is the area of Asakusa and Ueno, where the majority of the hostels are. So the absolute cheapest option, accommodation-wise, is staying in a hostel in a dormitory where you can find a bed for as little sometimes as 2,000 yen. If I'm travelling in a group, that's usually the option we go for. The second best option is staying in a capsule hotel, which is a bit more expensive, between 3,000 to 5,000 yen per night. If I had to choose between a hostel and a capsule hotel, I would usually go for a capsule hotel just because the beds are bigger, there's some degree of privacy with the shutter, and you get your own TV. What more could you want? After capsule hotels, the next cheapest option is to stay at a business hotel where you can find a single room for about 5,000 yen per night if you're lucky, but typically between 5,000 to 7,000 yen. I could recommend some budget hotel chains like Toyoku Inn or APA Hotels, but actually I found over the last year the best way is to just go online and compare prices for about half an hour. The three best websites are probably booking.com, japanican.com and Rakuten Travel, and Hostel World if you're booking a hostel. You can find bargains on Airbnb as well, especially if you're travelling in a group of like 3 or 4 people. But if you're travelling solo, I tend to find Airbnb works out to be more expensive, and I use it more for the experience of staying somewhere interesting rather than to travel on a budget. Finally, the wildcard option is to stay in a love hotel where you can find a room for about 8,000 yen per night on average. Although with a love hotel, you're paying for the room rather than the people in it. So if you're going with 2 people, then it still works out cheaper than a standard hotel room. And it's typically a lot bigger than a standard hotel room, with things like cages, teddy bear caves, and jacuzzis at your disposal. Try and book all of your accommodation at least 3 months in advance to save quite a bit of money. And also for hostels, it's kind of essential given that they are still a bit of a rarity. So try and book them all 3 months in advance to not only get a room, but to get one cheap as well. And the last option, and one that I use a heck of a lot, are overnight buses, which leads us on to transportation. Japan's transportation infrastructure is legendary. Riding on trains is an effortless joy. They're never late, they're always clean, and passengers aren't shouting down the phone about how drunk they were last weekend with their friends Barry and Deborah. But it is a little bit pricey, especially the bullet trains. And the first conundrum most foreign travellers have when coming here is whether or not to get the Japan Rail Pass, where for about 46,000 yen, you can travel the country freely for 2 weeks on Shinkansen and local trains, and save quite a bit of money and have peace of mind along the way. To give you an idea of how much you could save, if you came to Japan for a 2-week trip, visiting Tokyo, Kyoto and Hiroshima, the cost of catching bullet trains on a round trip would be around 43,000 yen. If you take into consideration other costs, such as subway trains and buses, that'd likely add up to another 10,000 yen. At the minimum, you're saving about 6,000 yen, but probably more. And more importantly, it'll save you the time and stress of standing around at ticket machines every day for 2 weeks, buying train tickets and bus tickets. And that alone is a good enough reason to consider it. However, there is an even cheaper way of travelling the country. Some friends recently visited and we travelled the same route from Tokyo to Kyoto and Hiroshima. Instead of using 3 bullet trains on the round trip, we used 2 night buses and a domestic flight from Hiroshima back to Tokyo. On top of that, we probably spent another 10,000 yen travelling around the cities on the subway trains. That gave us a total of 34,000 yen, which is quite a bit cheaper than getting the Japan Rail Pass. If you're travelling Japan on a budget, let night buses be your secret weapon, because as well as being half the price of a bullet train, if you travel through the night, you're also saving on accommodation as well. For example, we travelled on the night bus for 2 nights and thus saved 2 nights of accommodation, which would have been around another 8,000 yen. That said, if you are travelling by night bus, there are a few additional costs. For example, you'll need to spend at least another 600 yen on a bottle of wine to make sure you're fully knocked out for the duration of the trip. I'd say 50% of the time I'm able to sleep on the night bus, and the other 50% of the time I arrive at my destination a broken man, cursing the day that buses were ever invented. The two best websites for booking are Willer Express and japantravelbus.com, which are both in English and are nice and easy to use. In recent years though, Japan's also seen a steady stream of low-cost airline carriers popping up. For example, to fly from Sendai to Osaka costs as little as 5,000 yen with Peach Airlines, far cheaper than by train and even by bus. And if you still want to know if the Japan Rail Pass is worth it or not, you can use the Japan Rail Pass calculator on the Japan Guide's website, where you can input the length of time you're staying and your itinerary to get a rough idea of whether or not it's worth it. And if you want to save even more money, there's an even cheaper way than by travelling by bus. You can travel by skateboard. No, seriously, I'm not even trolling you. I know a guy who travelled all the way from Sapporo to Hiroshima on a skateboard. It took him 33 days and he saved at least 5,000 yen, which is the cost of travelling by plane. The only question that remains is, how budget are you willing to get? Yeah, I would have just flown it. The cheapest style of restaurant to eat out in Japan are the fast food restaurants. The three main ones are Sukiya, Yoshinoya and Matsuya, which can be found on most city streets across the country, and all of which sell the same style of rice bowl dishes covered in toppings, the most popular being gyudon, which is thinly sliced beef. So we've got rice, beef and 3 kinds of cheese, all for 490 yen, and without the cheese it's 350 yen, which is disturbingly cheap. It's not something you're going to write home to your family about, probably, but it is very filling. After you've had this, the next 6 hours you're sore. Also, it comes with Tabasco. This isn't product placement, it's not just randomly there. They give it to you with the bowl to give it some flavour. Although be careful, because you do get Tabasco all over your hands, and it does look like I've committed murder. Fast, filling and without the same sense of guilt that comes from eating at a Western style fast food restaurant, it's the ideal place to drop into for any budget traveller. Or just people like me who are lazy and can't be bothered to cook at home. Slightly healthier than Western fast food, although if you're like me and you smother your food in 3 kinds of cheese, you are going to lose those groundbreaking health benefits. Another good cheap fast food option are the standing restaurants dotted around train stations, where you can order a bowl of soba or udon from the vending machines for as little as 400 yen. And if I'm in a hurry around lunchtime, I'll quickly dive in and grab a bowl of mushroom soba. Tastes surprisingly good as well. But then again, even if you're a budget traveller, you probably didn't come all the way to Japan just to eat a bowl of rice with 3 kinds of cheese for 2 weeks. Or maybe you did. But fortunately, there's a really easy way of saving money if you're going out for the evening. There are a few Japanese words you really need to know before you visit, and one of those words is nomihodai, which means all you can drink. It's the holy grail of a cheap night out, where for around as little as 1,200 yen, you can drink as much as you can from an extensive drink menu for up to 2 hours.
Hey Chris. Hi.
It's pretty good. For 1,500 yen, you get all the alcohol you can drink and all the meat you can eat. Oh my god. It's less of a barbecue, more of just a general fire. Some types of restaurants also have tabehodai, all you can eat, particularly at yakiniku grilled meat restaurants, such as this one. Just be careful who you leave in charge of the barbecue. His food is on fire. Literally on fire. If you do some research online, finding bars and restaurants with nomihodai is pretty easy to do. If you're not a big drinker but still fancy a beer though, the cheapest place to buy alcohol is at the supermarket or convenience store. One really good thing about Japan is you can actually drink alcohol out in public, which you can't do in the UK. So you can come in here, you can grab your 1 cup sake, which is basically just a kind of a jam jar filled with cheap sake, and go off down the park and have a bit of fun. That said, it's not that great, so probably avoid that unless it's your first time drinking sake, because then you won't have anything to compare it to. It's also a great place to pick up breakfast or lunch, such as onigiri rice balls or cheap ready meals.
Soba noodles, 340 yen. Pretty cheap. The perfect thing for like a picnic or a light snack.
Finally, to give you a rough idea of the price of certain popular dishes, here's a full price breakdown with meals such as sushi and yakitori unsurprisingly being amongst the most expensive, and wagyu beef being so expensive I didn't even bother putting it on the list. So there you have it, travelling Japan on a budget. This video was made in collaboration with the Japan National Tourism Office London. If you're looking for ideas and advice on travelling to Japan, you can check out their glamorous website at seejapan.co.uk, which is one of the best resources for planning your trip to Japan. And if you're not a native English speaker, the JNTO website comes in 15 languages, which you can find at jnto.go.jp. I've also put a link to their Facebook page in the description box if you're looking for more ideas for your trip. But for now, many thanks for watching, guys, and if you are watching this in preparation for an upcoming trip to Japan, just want to wish you an awesome trip. Have a good one. Oh, I really shouldn't wink like that at the end. It just looks